Toy Adaptation Officers. So Sam.
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm one of the toy adaptation officers with a focus on collaborations with toy lending organizations like in the community. I'm majoring in molecular biology and it's my 4th year of undergraduate. And a fun fact about me is that I play the piano.
And I'm Avery. I'm also a toy adaptation officer. My focus is on campus events, which is technically this because we can't actually have on-campus events right now. My major is bioengineering, and I'm also a 4th year undergrad. My fun fact is that during quarantine, I got a new kitten, and he's about 5 months old now, and he's my favorite.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nicole Zano. I'm the 3rd and final toy adaptation officer, and I mainly focus on the toy donations for our community. I am a 3rd year mechanical engineering PhD student, and my fun fact is I play sled hockey.
So now we're going to take a little bit of time for you guys to introduce yourselves to us and to each other. We're going to put you into breakout rooms, and each of the breakout rooms should be led by either a toy adaptation officer, another HuskyADAPT officer, or one of our HuskyADAPT ambassadors. And it's meant to be fairly low key. I just want to say your name, what program you're in, why you're interested in HuskyADAPT, and what you hope to get out of Toy Adaptation 101. So Nicole, I think, is going to go put us in breakout rooms. We'll see you guys in like 10 minutes.
Hi, Jennifer. We're just starting off with. Avery, I think everybody is back now, so you're good to start again.
Okay, cool. Welcome back, you guys. I enjoyed talking to the people that were in my room, so I hope you guys had a good experience in yours. We are going to jump into our presentation, looking at what toy adaptation is, give you some more details. Also, any ambassadors or HuskyADAPT officers that were here to facilitate breakout rooms, you are free to go if you do not want to stay for the rest of the presentation. Thank you for your help. So what is toy adaptation? Toy adaptation is the process of making toys accessible for people with a diverse skill set, and just making the toys easier to interact with in general. And for us, what that looks like is taking a toy and looking at the insides generally, and then inserting a universal headphone jack so that the toy can be activated by an external switch. And why is toy adaptation important? Why do we do this at all? First off, play is developmentally important for children. Playing with toys teaches things like cooperativity, cause and effect, fine and gross motor skills. And these toys that you see on the shelves are not created with everybody in mind. For example, if a child has spinal muscular atrophy, they might not have the strength or the fine motor skills to press a small button and activate a toy, but they would still benefit from being able to play with that toy. So our goal is to combat this issue and give them a more accessible way to play with these toys. And lastly, adapted toys on the market are super expensive. As you can see, this toy usually runs for like $30, but the Switch adapted version of it is over twice that price, which makes it difficult for families to get them if they need them. What do we need in order to adapt toys? First thing you need is you need a toy that can be adapted, and that is not every toy. That toy needs to be battery operated and it can't plug into an outlet, which most toys don't, but if they did, we are not able to adapt them as it would be unsafe to do so. And then you also need various other things such as a soldering iron, a universal audio jack, copper wiring, a test wire or a multimeter, and then other various tools like screwdrivers, wire cutters, etc. So here's a basic, very basic level overview of the toy adaptation process. First, you're going to start off by assessing and disassembling the toy. You're going to get your toy, you're going to look at it and make sure that as it came in the box, that it is functioning how it's supposed to. If it doesn't have batteries, you get batteries, you test the toy, make sure it works. And then you're going to open it up and you're going to try and find the inner workings of your toy so that you can decide which functions you want to adapt. A lot of times electric toys have more than one function, like 2 buttons you could push that like sing different songs, or like one lights up and one makes sound, something like that. And so you want to decide which functions you think are the most interesting so that you can adapt that function. For our purposes, we tend to just adapt one function on the toy, usually because of time constraints, but it is possible to adapt more than one function with more than one toy. Then you would test the soldering points with a test wire or a multimeter, which I will go over that process in a little bit. And then lastly, well, not lastly for this slide, you solder the points to your copper wiring. Then you're gonna make an exit route for your wires. So if you have a plastic toy, you're gonna drill a hole in the side of it, as you can see right here. And if it's a plush toy, maybe you're cutting a small hole, but you're making somewhere for your wires to go. Then you're gonna solder the other ends of your copper wiring to the universal jack, reassemble your toy, and then make it look pretty. So a big thing with our toy adaptation is we like to put the toys back in their original packaging and make it look like it's off the shelf, so that when the kids get these toys, even though they have been tampered with, it feels like they're getting something brand new off the shelf like any other child would want. Now we'll jump into a little bit more of the technical side of things. We'll start with a brief overview of circuits and switches. In order to do this, you have to have like a very basic understanding of how circuits work, and so that you can solder and adapt the toys appropriately. But don't be afraid if you don't know circuitry, because I'll be honest, I don't know circuitry super well, and I've made it this far. So generally, there are 3 kinds of circuits. There's complete circuits, open circuits, and short circuits. So a complete circuit is just normally what you think of. There's energy flowing through the circuit. There's some sort of load or resistance, and it functions like a proper circuit would. An open circuit is essentially the same thing, except there's this little gap in the wiring where you could insert a switch to close it and complete the circuit and turn it on when you want it on, turn it off when you want it off. And then a short circuit is when there's no resistance and there's just a ton of energy flowing through this wiring, and that's bad and dangerous. And then there's parallel versus series for the loads or resistance. When a circuit is in parallel, both of the loads are getting full voltage. They're getting the same voltage as given by the power supply. When they're in series, they share voltage, so they're getting half of the energy that's flowing through. So for our purposes, we want to solder in parallel to the circuit in the toy. One of the loads that exists is the original button that's in the toy, and the other one is the audio jack that we are adding. And we are adding that audio jack in parallel. This way, both the original button and our new switch get the same voltage, and both the original functionality and the external switch can function properly. If that makes sense. And then I said I would explain how to use a test wire / multimeter. Test wires tend to be easier and more accessible. So that is what we typically use. And it's basically just a small single piece of wiring, as you can see in the bottom right. And you're just going to want to connect 2 points on the circuit board that you think are going to activate the toy. And so if you touch those 2 points and the toy activates, then you have found your solder points. And those are the 2 points that you want to solder your wires to when you are adapting the toy. If you touch it and it doesn't do anything, then those are not valid points to solder to. It won't do anything. It might just short the circuit. And you want to keep searching for different points until you find one that activates the function that you want to adapt. And note, don't hold the test wire on points for too long, because if you're just shorting the circuit, that's very dangerous. We have a ton of different types of switches that can go into these universal audio jacks that we are putting into the toys. They vary from push buttons to bite switches to like a foot pedal. So for the push button, it could be different like forces required to push the button or different sizes of the button. The bite switch you can chew on, and the foot pedal you can, press your foot. There's also ones that you can like tilt your head and push a button. There's tons of different types of switches. They all just depend on the need of the child. And then we use 2 different types of jacks when adapting our toys. They're a mounted jack and a lead jack. So this mounted jack actually goes into the hole that's cut into the toy. Like if you have a plastic toy and you drilled a hole, then you would insert this audio jack straight into the side of the toy and it would sit there secure. Whereas this lead jack is often used in plush toys that don't have that solid exterior for the jack to sit in. So they like dangle out of the side of the toy, and they're like wrapped and like, secure. And so now we're going to get into the technical side of soldering, and that will be Sam, who will be taking over from here.
Yeah, so just a quick definition of soldering. You're basically it's like hot gluing, but with metal. You're bonding pieces of metal together, and as you can see in the picture, you can do that like on a circuit board. You're melting like this filler, which is what solder is, between the pieces, so it's just like glue. And the filler metal has a lower melting point than the pieces that we want to connect, so that it's easy to put those 2 pieces together, but not be melting like the original things. So about safety, which is very important when it comes to soldering. How to care for the iron tip is also really important, because you don't always want to have to be buying new soldering iron tips. There's a thing called pre-tinning, which basically is you coat the tip of the iron with a thin layer of solder before using it, and it's gonna make the tip kind of like a shiny silver color. That's how you know when it's tinned. And it's good to clean the tip off often. You can either use a wet sponge like I have right here, or brass wool, like something like this. Because when solder gets onto your iron, it'll start, since it's continuously being melted, it'll just start oxidizing onto your soldering iron, and it'll start turning dull gray. It's because of the oxidation, and that's not good for the tip, because then it stops working well and you have to change it out. And so a new looking soldering iron should not look like this. It shouldn't be a dull gray. It should either be just kind of like neutrally colored, or just like silver. So actual safety, it's good to have closed-toed shoes when you're soldering, because if solder is, sometimes when you solder, little pieces of like melted solder will fly out of whatever you're working on, and so having closed-toed shoes will prevent either the iron itself falling onto your foot, or just like melted solder falling onto your foot and like burning you. Same thing goes with safety glasses. You don't want things flying into your eyes. Glasses, I guess, work mostly as well. It's good to have good ventilation, because solder does release fumes, and those are not good to breathe in long term. An important note: when you're holding the iron, this is the whole iron, if you can see it. Only hold the top part. Do not touch anything metal, or else you will burn yourself. It's just good practice to never touch anything metal, not even if you know the iron is off, because it's just a habit that you build up. And of course, stay away from flammable items while you're soldering, because it's good to not catch things on fire. Yeah, just an overview of the soldering process. Make sure you have the correct tip. There's different shapes of soldering iron tip. There's this one, which is kind of like a pencil. It's pointed. There's also like a chisel tip. And so it kind of depends on the project that you're using, although a lot of the time it doesn't really matter that much which tip that you have. When you turn on the solder, a lot of irons have heat control, so you can change the temperature on them. We recommend somewhere around 600 to 700 degrees Fahrenheit, which is somewhere around 340 degrees Celsius. So you want to basically heat the iron to the lowest temperature possible that you can still melt solder with. Yeah. Stripping wires is the next part that you'll want to do. Usually using a wire stripper. I don't really have one to show you, but it kind of just looks like pliers, but there's little holes in it, and you put the wire through the wire stripper, and then you just pull the rubber part out without damaging the wire inside, which is what we mean by carefully strip. And we take maybe like less than an inch or so, because you want as little exposed wire as you can, so that you're not short, so that there's a low chance of you shorting things. And be careful not to cut the metal part, because like the actual wire, because that will decrease the amount of connection that you can get. After you strip the wires, when you have exposed wire, you tin the wires as well, to make it easier for everything to stick together. Yeah, I'm gonna try and demo how to solder. Nicole, do you mind pinning my other video? Thank you.
Everybody can see the soldering demo? No? Okay.
Can you guys hear me well if I'm talking like this direction?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, hopefully this works. So I have Give me 1 second. I'm gonna move my laptop. Okay. So I have this toy right here. You guys can see my iron is in the corner here. There's a wet sponge. There's water on it. This is a brass wool. You can use one or the other when you're soldering. I prefer to have the brass wool because it actually, in my opinion, gets the solder off better than the sponge. But I like to have both because I don't know if you can hear that, but it's the water sizzling, so I can tell the temperature on it on the iron. Never touch the metal part, as I said before. So I think this is a good way to see if your iron is hot enough. Yeah, so we have this toy here that can be adapted. I have right here this is the audio jack like we were talking about before. It's one of these. It's one of these, but with a wire already attached to it. The other type, which was the lead wires, they look like this. You like, if I can do this, you can unscrew. Yeah, you unscrew the inside, and it just goes like in and out like this, and then a wire goes out through the toy. So yeah, when you adapt the toy, you have the two stripped wires right here. This is my solder right here. It's just a little piece of metal that melts really easily. Make sure your fingers don't get too close to it because the heat can travel and it gets pretty hot. Hopefully the lighting's not too bad on that. So what Avery was talking about earlier with the test wire, right now I have batteries in the toy. What she was saying with the test wire, it's just a tiny little thing like this. I wish I had a bigger one, but I do not. For bigger toys that need to be tested farther away, you would have a longer length of wire so that you can reach. But this one is really close together. So basically it's just one piece of wire. And what you're doing is you're just shorting the circuit so that it will turn on no matter what. There's going to be a bright light at the camera in a second, just letting you guys know. So here I know the on-off switch is right here. And so I'm going to guess that maybe it's like these two. And so if you can see that there, I'm touching two of the connection points that are near this on-off switch, which creates a closed circuit, which turns on the toy. And that's essentially what this button does, the on-off switch does anyways. So now that I've found my two soldering points, it's time to solder. I like to put a little bit of solder onto my iron. So it's kind of like painting. Yeah, so something like this. Also, you can't see it, but there's like a tiny little piece of like fluid that has melted out of the solder and flew onto my hand. So that's why we like to have eye protection, so that doesn't happen to your eyes. Yeah, so when you're soldering, you have these two, you have two ends and you have 2 points. I'm gonna try and do this at the camera while still being able to be safe with this. Yeah. So you basically just paint it onto your connection. So you guys can see the light kind of turning on and off. That's just what's happening when I accidentally touch like the iron towards both of the sides at once, because again, that's like, it's just shorting it. Which you don't want to happen in your end product, but yeah. So you can kind of test it by like wiggling it a little bit and see like, I didn't do it well enough, and so it's just coming off again. I'm gonna adjust the temperature a little bit and then just try again.
And if anybody has questions during this portion, you can either type them in the chat or just unmute yourselves and ask it live.
Yeah, feel free to just ask out loud.
And I can read the ones in the chat if needed.
Awesome. So what I'm doing right now is I accidentally got a tiny piece of solder onto the other connection, so I'm kind of just prying them apart. But yeah, see, it's not shorting right now, so it's fine. Always remember to clean off the tip so that it doesn't become oxidized. It's still pretty shiny, as you can maybe see from the reflection.
What would have happened if you did not clean off the solder that kind of strayed?
Like from the connection?
Yeah.
Sometimes what can happen is even if it's not shorting like right now, when you close it up, when you close up the toy or return it to its original form, is if the toy gets jostled like in delivery or the transportation process or while the child is playing with it, it's just it just makes it easier for the toy to malfunction and short after you put it back together. I have had cases where the toy seems to work fine when it's just like this, and when you put it back together, it suddenly starts turning on all by itself. And the reason for that is because you have wires that are shorting inside of one of the reasons could be that is because you have wires shorting inside of the toy that you didn't catch while you were soldering. So being careful at this step is good because it saves you a lot of work later, especially for toys with a lot of screws. Yeah. So
Super helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I don't know if you guys can kind of see that smoke, like this trail right here. That's the stuff coming out of the solder, and that's why we like to have good ventilation. So I'm tinning the wire right now.
So because of the malfunction concept that you just spoke about, when you're soldering on that second wire, are you trying to make sure that solder doesn't touch the first wire?
Yes. You do not want in any circumstances these two connection points to be touching each other because that's what's going to create the shorting.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also going to note that when you're soldering to the jack, the same principle applies. You're not going to want your two leads touching because the same thing will happen.
Yeah, thank you, Avery. So if you look at, if you can see this, sort of, these two are not touching. I'm going to show in just a second a second measure that you can take to make sure that wires don't short. But first, I have another jack here, and it's, as you can see, like the things are all, the two little prongs here, they're all bent out almost entirely flat to this thing. And that's okay to do because it doesn't really affect when you have to plug something in. Yeah, like it doesn't affect when you have to plug something in like this. it's totally fine. And what it does is it just puts some extra, it just creates some extra distance between the wires so that you can just make sure they're not touching.
One thing to note, I have had an issue with when adapting a toy before for the headphone jack, is if that bar, Sam, can you put it back into view?
Yeah, 1 second.
So if the main metal piece, not the part that you just soldered, if that main metal piece is not touching where the headphone jack will go into, that is how you actually close the circuit. And so if it's not actually touching, it won't activate the toy. So that's some place that you could sometimes have an issue, is if that main wide bar is tilted back. When you put the headphone into it, it does not actually come in contact.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's this part right here.
Yep.
You have to make sure that this one is standing up straight, but the other ones you can just move around a little bit, and that's fine. My favorite thing right now is electrical tape. You basically electrical tape everything. First of all, right now I think I'm okay with these soldering points because they're not really moving. You kind of jiggle them a little bit, and if they're not coming off, then it's probably fine. Which means that I need to turn off my iron. I just have an off switch right here. If you don't, just unplug the thing. It takes like 2 minutes for an iron to heat up, and it's just not worth burning yourself over. Yes. So electrical tape, basically anywhere that you see metal, I like to say, going back to the point that I said earlier about only snipping off like less than an inch for stripping the wires, I actually sometimes strip off more, because in my opinion it's easier to cut the wire down than to strip it again, but that will also leave me with a lot of exposed wire. And so how to mitigate this is, since it's so thin, I kind of just, you can kind of just like you can kind of just wedge soldering or electrical tape between your connections, like just a teeny little piece of it, which will keep the sides from touching. And basically anywhere you see an exposed wire, just electrical tape it. So somewhere right there, and then just like this, if you can see it, there's a piece of tape going in between the two solder points that I soldered to, and also wrapped around one of the wires that was still a little bit exposed after I soldered. On the other side as well, there's not really much exposed wire that you can see, but just to be safe, just wrap a little bit of tape around it. Yeah, so that's basically the process of actually both soldering and toy adaptation. So I'll just walk you through the last steps of how we try to put this back together. First of all, make sure the toy works. The original function, bright lights again, trying the on-off switch, the light's coming on, so that means it's working. And then usually when we're in person, we have a test button, which is one of the ones that Avery showed you guys earlier, that we have at toy adaptation events so that you can test out the new toy, because this this audio jack here is what's gonna allow whoever's getting the toy to plug in their own switch the way they can use it. I don't have one here with me at home. So what I've done is I had an old pair of headphones that didn't work anymore. So I just cut it at the end and then shorted the two wires together as you get, what happened to my camera focus? Hello. Yeah, no, that's not gonna go. All right. Okay. Yeah, so you can see I just shorted I stripped the wires. This is the headphone is basically just another wire. I just stripped it and then shorted the ends here. So now I have basically a shorted wire, which means that when I plug this in, if it works, it should turn on. So possibly bright lights. Yep. See, I've plugged it in. It's touching this back piece right here, like Nicole said. And since this is shorted, that completes the circuit and the toy turns on. So that's basically how you adapt a toy. I did not get enough time to entirely dig a hole through this. What we were saying about digging a hole through a plastic toy is we are literally digging a hole through a toy. I have this screw bit here. We also use mostly use things like files and a sharpened screwdriver to do this. But basically you're literally just like digging a hole through the thing that I did not get enough time to do. So yeah, you guys can watch me finish up this hole.
And also, if you guys have any questions about this process or just about toy adaptation in general, you are free to ask while Sam finishes up the hole and puts the toy back together.
So the hole, you're digging the hole, you have to do it like manually. You don't use like make a small drill, like use a small drill bit to.
So I've done that as well. I do like to do it. I think at HuskyADAPT is kind of like, it's kind of a safety thing because it is really easy to like hurt yourself on it, especially if you don't really know how to use it like properly. The other thing is that some of the toys are like really thin. Their plastic is really thin, which means that if you just push too hard on the thing, the whole thing, like the whole wall will like collapse and it just breaks the toy. And so to avoid that, we just use files and stuff. It does take longer, but you know, you win some, you lose some.
And also some of the toys are really compact inside with, like sometimes it's difficult to put them all back together. So sometimes there's important things right behind where you would drill, so you wouldn't want to drill into it. It's not as painful as you think. It's just kind of like a mundane task. We have some tools that make it easier. But yeah, so we usually just do it by hand.
Okay, so there's actually like a little plastic support behind this. So let's see if I can get this all the way through. Yeah, it doesn't look like it. Okay.
I'm gonna send out a quick poll real quick about all of yours interest in doing virtual toy adaptation events, and once COVID rules allow, to do distanced but in person. So normally when you do toy adaptations, you're working with other people, but these would be distance masked and all working by yourselves. Realistically, that second option's not happening this fall because of UW's rules, but we just want to get your interest moving forward with how we can still adapt toys and have HuskyADAPT events while being all remote. So I'm going to launch the polling right now.
Would you like me to respond to it, Nicole?
Sure, I would love to know your response, but I think I know your response.
Okay.
All All right, so quick lesson about where to place the exit hole. Do not place it above or behind, like, I don't think you can see it well, but if you see like this little piece right here, there's a little like support, and it's basically just a line of plastic that like helps the thing stay together. It's harder. You can definitely do it, and like the way I'm doing it is I'm just trying to cut it off. But in general, it's just a lot easier if you just avoid that hole if possible. Some toys are really short on space for anything else to go into, and so you'll have to do that. It's just easier when you don't have to go through all of this.
Yeah, so like if you were to get your toy, your ideal like place to drill your hole would be like a flat surface that has like a space on the inside where the like inside of the jack isn't going to hit anything. Also, to answer the question in the chat, I don't believe that we have any events planned as of right now because we are still trying to finalize like what it's going to look like as we do virtual adoption. But Nicole or Sam can correct me if I'm wrong.
All right, hopefully this is good enough. I'm gonna try putting this together.
Also, I'm going to ask another question, is if you are actually currently local to Seattle for the fall quarter, because it's difficult doing virtual things, but in order to do the virtual events the way we're planning right now, you need to be local to Seattle. So we just want that information as well. We're trying our hardest to still have events. And oh, wow, there's a lot more questions. I'll read some more. For those of us who are new to soldering, where are good places to buy necessary tools? We can provide like good, we can provide a list of like what good like intro to soldering tools are. We can either send that out to everybody who came to this event, or we can make sure that it's in the HuskyADAPT newsletters. So we can provide that information for you.
We also might be able to stick it on the website somewhere.
Yes, that sounds like a good idea too.
Yeah, my kit just came off of Amazon. If you're not looking at like high-end stuff, I think this was somewhere around $30–40, and it has okay, this is kind of a mess right now, but it has all of this stuff in it, and like your solder and the iron, of course. So basically a different type of wire stripper that I have not been able to successfully use. It has like a thing, like a tweezers, some wire. This is screwdrivers. This is a solder sucker, which I did not show you guys how to use, but I don't really remember how much time we have, and if we have extra time, I can show how to use it. And then there's like a multimeter in here too. So like if you're just a beginner, like kits don't cost that much if you're not like horribly picky about how well your iron works or something. Just take good care of it and it will work fine.
Yeah,
the biggest problems I've seen is just with people saying that the temperatures are inconsistent. So that's, I think, the main thing to look out for, but that's it.
Yeah, and I see another question very similar to that saying like, if we do something like buy this list of items and join us for a guided toy adaptation via Zoom with your purchase materials, that is definitely an option as well. The plan is that you'll be adapting your toy virtually while we're kind of walking through. We're all working together and helping each other out. And there was a question of, are we given the toy to adapt or told the specific toy? This is all still being figured out as we're figuring out what is the best way to do it, and how what the university will allow. But we have specific toys that we know are easily adapted, and like we know toys that are frequently requested. And currently we will only be adapting plastic toys instead of any plush toys for disinfectant reasons. But I think that answers everybody's questions.
Nice. So I've dug the hole big enough and cut inside thin enough. By thin enough, I mean, when you look at this here, you only have this much space for this thing to go from the inside to the outside. And I've tucked the wire. If you didn't see how my circuit board, I don't remember if I showed it. This is the circuit board. It goes down in this particular toy. It goes down like this. 1 second. All right. Okay. It just goes down like this into here. And so this wire's coming out. It's attached to the circuit board underneath. And I'm threading it through inside of the toy to the other side here where I've made the hole. And it fits through the hole. And then there's this little piece here. There's actually this piece and a washer, which is just another very thin circle of metal in case your plastic is thinner and you have more things sticking out. You can put this on here like that. And then you put the, this piece just screws onto the top.
And Sam, there's a question for you saying, when you solder, is there a certain angle you should attach the wires?
That depends mostly just on the toy. With this one, it didn't matter as much. It matters more with the more difficult toys when you have literally zero space to like move around in. Sometimes if you're let's see, I've had a toy where it was like, this was the board, and like the connections were here, and I connected them this way, like the wires going this way, but when I needed to put the toy away, they needed to go the opposite way, and so I had to bend them around this way, and that did not work because it put like, it was basically just peeling the solder off, so I had to take it off and redo it. But those are the cases where the direction would matter. For angle, it's just easier to do it kind of like board and then like wire like resting on it. It's just easier to do it that way than like standing up or something because you only have 2 hands.
And also when it's down, I feel like it's a lot easier to get more contact and surface area touching to ensure that you have a stable thing that when it gets dropped by a kid, it's not going to become disconnected.
Yeah. So after I've put this mostly back together, last thing to check, besides just having your wires fit into the toy, you also need to have them, you see I don't know if you can see there you go, like these pillars here. You need to make sure that you're not having wires go across that because this is where this like dome thingy attaches. And if you have stuff touching there, then you're not able to put the screws back in, you can't put it back together, etc. So that's like one last thing to take into account. Yeah, are there any more questions while I put the screws back into this thing?
And your questions don't like necessarily have to be technical. Any questions you have, we're here to answer.
It says, how exactly does the addition of the audio jack make the toy more accessible? So earlier in Avery's presentation, you saw those different switches. And so all of those switches, either the bite valve, the head tilt, the big large button with textures, there's all different kinds. All of those switches have a headphone jack that you then just, they can be attached into the toy. And so that's how they're being able to use. So the headphone jack is how it is actually, the audio jack is actually how you're able to activate the toy. It also makes it easy because a lot of these switches, the families or the schools already have. And so they just need a toy and they already have something that's universal that adapts to it. Oh, yeah, and also if you have any questions about HuskyADAPT in general or toy adaptation in general, we want to go over like the technical stuff so you understood it in a little bit deeper. But are these toys lent out to families or sold? Do you ever provide switches for people? So for switches, we provide a link to where we usually get them. We do not provide switches, and the toys are given out to families and they are not sold. So they're donated to families and schools, and we're always getting a lot of requests for area schools, even going all the way down to Oregon. There's no other toy lending libraries. There's no toy lending libraries. There's one starting in Washington. And so there's definitely a need for it, especially in schools and in families. And some clinics, like occupational therapy clinics, also request them.
Yeah, if you have questions about the lending library that's opening in Seattle, I may be able to answer them because I am a little bit affiliated with them. Okay.
This recording will be put on the website, the HuskyADAPT website, so everybody can rewatch.
All right, funny story. I got this toy like half opened kind of, and so there are only two screws, and so now I am done putting in the screws. Yeah. So the last test is after you put them away, I'm trying to see if this still goes together. Obviously I forgot a piece. Oh my gosh. I forgot this thing. This is the off switch. So gonna need an additional minute.
And Kelly, we can put you in contact with Sam to discuss your questions about starting a lending library.
Yeah.
Any more questions? You guys excited about toy adaptation? Okay. Will we ever be soldering anything other than an audio jack? So you have to solder onto the actual toy as well, as Sam has shown. So you have to do 4 total soldering points, 2 to the audio jack, and then 2 to the actual circuit board for the device. Does that answer your question, Maria? Okay. I can't hear Sam anymore. I don't know.
Oh, sorry, I'm just not talking.
Oh, okay. But yeah, one of the hardest parts sometimes is putting the toy back together. It's a good thing to make sure you remember how you took it apart and don't lose any little screws or any of that.
Yeah, it's helpful sometimes to take pictures along the way because you would be surprised at how complicated some of the toys get.
Yeah, something's not lining up in the circuit board. Hold on. This toy also, like this specific toy, also has this problem where for some reason, after you adapt it, the on-off switch just flips, and we've tried to like reverse the connections, and we've tried to do like other stuff, and just for some reason, I don't really know why, it just does that. So
toy adaptation is definitely like trial and error, and the process varies for every toy. I mean, I've been doing it for years, and there's like sometimes where it's super easy, sometimes where just nothing wants to work. So,
but one nice thing about it is you don't need to be an engineer to do it. Like I've taught Girl Scouts in middle school how to solder, and they were able to adapt toys.
We taught fifth graders as well.
Yeah.
So we didn't teach them to solder, but we taught them the process.
Yeah. So like I was able to teach Girl Scouts in middle school how to solder and how to adapt toys. And so it's definitely nice that it's not just engineering, and that's why we're not just an engineering club. We love engineers.
And I'm a biology major.
But
yeah, I'm a biology major, so you really don't need to know much about this.
But the toys we have, they have lights, sound, motion. A lot of them have music and dancing, but you'll learn a lot about kid toys. I did not know. But if nobody has any other questions, I know it is over 6:30, so I don't want to hold anybody up if they have to go while Sam finishes up putting the toy back together. But we hope to see you guys at future events. We hope to see you in person eventually one day, but thank you for holding by us and still trying to do virtual events as we figure out the best way to still have contact with HuskyADAPT and still adapt toys while not being able to be in person.
hope you guys found this helpful.
All right, that should be it.
Does it work?
We're about to find out. So there's two steps to testing if this works.
And to answer Tiffany's question, you will not be on the email list since you came to the meeting. However, if you go to the HuskyADAPT website, which I can link in a second, you can sign up to be added to the email list there.
All right, so first test, on off. This works. Can't really see it well, but there's like a disco light shining in my face. Second test is the adapted side. So normally when you have an actual button, right when you plug it in, it should not turn on. Right now, what I have is a shorted headphone jack, and so it will turn on as soon as I do it. Usually you have it like an actual button that will make it turn on when you press down on it. But right now, I plug it in and it works. So that's a job done.
And I just put the website link, and if you just scroll down on the main page, there's a big button that says join our email list. And then you will get, we send out bi-monthly newsletters that have all the information for all parts of HuskyADAPT. And if we have any toy adaptation events, they'll be listed there to sign up.
And also all of our contact info that was listed at the beginning of the PowerPoint is on the website, as well as all the contact info for the rest of the officers.
And monthly is in twice a month.
Yeah, twice a month.
Yeah. That's always weird, because I don't want to say bi-weekly, because it's not every 2 weeks. It's not twice a week. It's every other week.
Every other week.
It's like at the start of the month and the middle of the month.
Philip asked, what do the design teams do? So there's an application open right now. I don't know much about that because I can give you a brief summary, but we can also give you people to contact to learn more. But they address different problems that community members want solved. So there is one design team this year working on toys specifically for kids with ASD. There's another group working on an app in collaboration with Seattle Children's Hospital. And there's another one working on designing a gate walker, a gate trainer for children. I think there's one more that I'm not remembering. But they go through the process of designing different things, and that is a larger commitment, but there's an application out right now. Forget when it closes. But I can get you in contact, Philip, with somebody for that. feel like it closes soon.
Yeah, if I would recommend checking out like the website and checking or contacting the design team officers, because they definitely know more than we do.
Yeah, and I'm putting the application link. Yep, it closes tomorrow. I'm putting the application link in the chat right now.
And the design projects change year to year. So if you're like not interested in the ones that we have right now, and you have some more years that you want to be associated with HuskyADAPT, then you can always apply in the future. I think also different projects have different levels of time commitment. So that's something to look out for.
Okay, if you guys have no other questions, then we can, oh. So the application cycle is every year, not every quarter. I believe it is every year. But that would be a better question for one of the design chairs, and I can put, their emails are also on the website. When you go to our team and student executive chairs, all of their emails are listed there, and that would be a much better question for them. I'm sorry, I do not know the answer to that.
We've tried like different things. We've tried quarterly and we've tried yearly, and I just don't remember which one they're doing for this year.
Yeah, wait, who was it Kimberly asking for about the lending libraries?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just gonna put my email in the chat.
I
right
sent
now.
it to her already.
Oh, okay, awesome. Thank you.
And Ellie, I just put in the emails of all 3 design chairs, and so you can contact them. Sorry that we cannot answer that question for you.
So yeah, hopefully this was kind of clear through my phone's camera quality. But we got it, so. My phone just died. That's pretty great. Yeah, good thing we're done.
So if you guys have any questions, you can stick around. If not, the meeting is done. Thanks for coming out and joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
for
you,
staying.
guys.
Thank you.
Mhm.